The wind screamed across the ice fields of Frost 7. Dr. Sarah Chen pulled her thermal coat tighter around her body. The cold bit through every layer of clothing she wore. Her breath came out in white clouds that froze in the air. Sarah walked carefully across the frozen ground. Her team was 5 kilometers away at base camp. She was alone out here. That was how she liked to work. Animals behaved differently when groups of humans showed up with loud equipment and bright lights. She had been studying the rime stalkers for 3 months now. The creatures were massive, deadly predators. They stood as tall as earth bears but had 6 legs instead of 4. Their fur looked like crystal ice. Their teeth were long and sharp. Their claws could tear through metal. The rime stalkers had killed 2 members of the previous research team. The Galactic Conservation Collective had almost shut down the entire planet study because of those deaths, but Sarah had convinced them to give her one more chance. She promised to keep her distance and use only remote cameras. That promise was getting harder to keep. Sarah stopped walking. Something moved in the snow ahead. It was small. Too small to be an adult rime stalker. She crouched down and pulled out her scanner. The device beeped softly as it analyzed the heat signature. A cub. A young one. And it was alone. Sarah felt her heart beat faster. No one had ever seen a rime stalker cub before. Adult rime stalkers were territorial and extremely protective. They never let researchers get anywhere near their young. This was an incredible opportunity. She moved closer, slowly, 1 step at a time. The cub was digging in the snow looking for something. It was about the size of a large dog. Its crystalline fur sparkled in the pale sunlight. It had tiny horns on its head that would grow much larger as it aged. The cub looked up. Its eyes were bright blue and very intelligent. It stared at Sarah for a long moment. Then it went back to digging. Sarah smiled behind her face mask. The cub was not afraid. It did not see her as a threat. That was good. She activated her camera and began recording. This footage would be invaluable for understanding rime stalker behavior. She took another step closer. The cub looked at her again. This time it made a small chirping sound. Sarah froze. Was that a warning? No, the sound was curious, not aggressive. The cub tilted its head to one side. Then the cub ran toward her. Sarah's training screamed at her to run. But she held still. Running would trigger a chase response. Running would make her prey. She stood like a statue as the small predator charged straight at her. The cub did not attack. Instead, it circled around her legs, sniffing. Its cold nose touched her boots. It made more chirping sounds. Then it noticed her gloved hand hanging at her side. The cub grabbed the glove in its mouth and pulled. Hard. Sarah felt the glove sliding off her hand. The cold air hit her exposed skin immediately. She needed that glove. Frostbite could set in within minutes on Frost 7. But she also needed to see what the cub would do. She raised her bare hand slowly. The cub held onto the glove with its teeth. Its 6 legs dangled in the air as Sarah lifted her arm higher. The cub just hung there, refusing to let go. It made a low growling sound, but the growl was not threatening. Sarah had studied enough Earth predators to recognize the difference. This was not a threat display. This was play behavior. The cub was playing with her. Sarah's comm unit crackled to life. Her assistant's voice came through, panicked. Marcus had been watching her camera feedback at base camp. Sarah! Get away from that thing. It's a rime stalker. It could kill you. Wait, Sarah said quietly. Just watch. She lowered her hand slightly. The cub pulled harder on the glove, its little paws kicking in the air. Sarah pulled back gently. The cub growled again, playfully. It was tug of war. A game that wolf puppies played on Earth. A game that lion cubs played. A game that young predators everywhere seemed to understand. Sarah, this is insane. You need to get out of there now. Marcus was almost shouting, but Sarah was not listening. She was watching the cub's body language. Its ears were forward, not flat. Its tail was wagging, not still. Its eyes were bright with excitement, not narrow with aggression. Every sign pointed to the same conclusion. This baby predator wanted to play. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She lowered herself to the ground, sitting in the snow. The cub immediately released the glove and pounced on it, shaking it back and forth. Then it looked at Sarah and chirped again. She reached out slowly with her bare hand. The cub sniffed her fingers. Its breath was warm. Then it licked her hand with a rough tongue. Sarah laughed. It felt just like being licked by a puppy, except this puppy had crystal fur and too many teeth. She is bonding with it, another voice said over the comm. Dr. Yuki, the team's behavioral specialist. Sarah, do you realize what you're doing? You are creating an attachment with an apex predator. Yes, Sarah said. I know exactly what I am doing. The cub climbed into her lap. It was heavier than it looked. It curled up against her chest and made a rumbling sound like a purr. Sarah felt its heart beating fast. It was so young, so vulnerable. Where are your parents, little one? Sarah whispered. She looked around the ice field. No adult rhyme stalkers in sight. That was strange. Young predators were never left alone. Something was wrong. Sarah pulled her glove back on and stood up carefully. The cub protested with a small growl but jumped down. It followed her as she walked toward a cluster of ice formations nearby. She had a bad feeling. Behind the ice, she found what she feared she would find. 3 adult rhyme stalkers dead. Their bodies were torn apart. This was not a natural death. This was a battle. Territory wars between rival packs were common in predator species. The cub chirped sadly. It walked up to one of the bodies and nuzzled it with its nose. Its mother, Sarah realized. The baby was orphaned. Sarah, you need to leave it there, Marcus said firmly. We cannot interfere with natural processes. That is the first rule. Sarah looked down at the small creature. It looked back at her with those intelligent blue eyes. On Earth, humans had made a choice thousands of years ago. They could have stayed separate from wolves. They could have killed them all as competitors. Instead, they invited wolves into their camps. They shared food. They raised wolf puppies alongside human children. That choice created dogs. That choice created the most successful partnership between species in Earth's history. Sarah made her choice. I am bringing it back to camp, she said. The comm unit exploded with protests, but Sarah turned the volume down. She picked up the cub. It was surprisingly cooperative. It settled into her arms and made that purring sound again. Sarah began the long walk back to base camp, carrying a baby apex predator like it was a stray kitten. The base camp went silent when Sarah walked through the door carrying the rhyme stalker cub. 5 scientists stared at her. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The cub looked around the room with bright, curious eyes. It made a small chirping sound and snuggled closer to Sarah. Marcus was the first to find his voice. He stood up slowly from his workstation. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. Sarah, put that thing down, very slowly. His name is Grip, Sarah said calmly. She walked over to her desk and set the cub down gently. Grip immediately jumped onto her chair and started batting at her datapad with one paw. You named it? Dr. Yuki said. She took a step forward, then stopped. Sarah, that is an apex predator. It killed members of the last research team. That was the adults, Sarah said. This is a baby. And he is orphaned. I found 3 dead adult rhyme stalkers. Territorial dispute from the look of it. She pulled up her camera footage on the main screen. The team watched as Sarah interacted with Grip. They saw him playing tug-of-war with her glove. They saw him licking her hand. They saw him climbing into her lap like a puppy. The room stayed quiet as the video ended. Then everyone started talking at once. This is incredible behavioral data, Dr. Yuki said. She was already taking notes. Nobody has ever documented play behavior in rhyme stalkers. It is also incredibly dangerous, Marcus argued. What happens when that thing grows up? Adult rhyme stalkers are 3 meters tall and weigh over 500 kilograms. That is months away, Sarah said. Maybe years. Right now he is just a baby who needs care. Grip chose that moment to tumble off the chair. He landed on his back with all 6 legs in the air. He rolled around for a moment, then jumped up and pounced on Sarah's boot. She laughed and reached down to scratch behind his tiny horns. He made that purring sound again. The door to the base camp opened. Dr. Zelek walked in. He was from the Galactic Conservation Collective, the main organization that funded their research. He was not human. He belonged to a species called the Torvin, who looked like tall gray birds with 4 arms. Dr. Zelek saw Grip and froze. His feathers stood up straight. His large eyes went even wider. He made a sound like a kettle whistling. Murder beast, he shrieked. There is a murder beast in the camp. Grip looked at Dr. Zelek and tilted his head. Then he went back to chewing on Sarah's bootlaces. It is a baby, Sarah explained. He is not dangerous. Not dangerous? Dr. Zelak said with his voice going up even higher. Rhymestalkers killed 3 of my colleagues. They are Category 5 predators. You must destroy it immediately. No, Sarah said firmly. The room went quiet again. Dr. Zelak stared at her. His forearms waved in the air with agitation. You refuse a direct order from the Conservation Collective? I do, Sarah said. Watch this. She walked over to Grip and held out her hand. The cub looked up at her. Sarah spoke in a firm voice. Grip, sit. The cub just stared at her. Sarah tried again, this time pressing gently on his hindquarters. Grip sat down. Sarah immediately pulled out a piece of dried meat from her pocket and gave it to him. He gobbled it down and chirped happily. You are training it? Dr. Zelak sounded horrified. Of course, Sarah said. That is what humans do. We train predators. We have been doing it for thousands of years. She pulled up more files on the main screen. Images from Earth. Humans with wolves. Humans with bears. Humans with big cats. Humans with birds of prey. Ancient pictures showed humans riding horses. Modern pictures showed humans swimming with dolphins. Humans lived alongside the most dangerous animals on our planet, Sarah explained. We did not just kill them. We learned to understand them. We learned their body language. We learned how they communicate. And in many cases, we befriended them. Dr. Zelak was looking at the images with disbelief. He pointed at a picture of a human hugging a massive grizzly bear. That creature could tear that human apart with one swipe. Yes, Sarah agreed, but it chooses not to. Because the human raised it from a cub. Because they have a bond. That is what I am building with Grip. Another member of the Conservation Collective arrived. This one was a kelvar, which looked like a floating jellyfish with tentacles. It spoke through a translation device. This is madness. Your species befriended your own predators. Not just predators, Dr. Yuki added. She was now on Sarah's side. Humans domesticated wolves into dogs. We used them for hunting, protection, and companionship. We also domesticated cats who were once wild predators, horses who could kill us with one kick, birds of prey who we trained to hunt for us. The kelvar made a bubbling sound that meant confusion. Why would you do this? Why not simply eliminate the dangerous creatures? Sarah smiled. She picked up Grip, who had fallen asleep on her boot. She held him carefully in her arms. Because the best allies are the ones with sharp teeth, she said. Just then, alarms started blaring. Red lights flashed throughout the base. Marcus ran to the sensors. We have a breach in the perimeter. Something big. Multiple heat signatures. Sarah looked at the screen. Adult rhymestalkers. 5 of them. They were circling the base camp. These were not the same pack that died. This was the rival group. The ones who had killed Grip's family. Grip woke up in her arms. He looked toward the door and made a sound Sarah had not heard before. It was low and rumbling, almost like a warning. They are probably hunting, Dr. Zelak said. His feathers were shaking with fear. Rhymestalkers can smell prey from kilometers away. They are not hunting, Sarah said quietly. They smell Grip. They know there is a cub here. A cub from a rival pack. One of the adult rhymestalkers slammed against the door. The whole building shook. Everyone screamed except Sarah. She stood still, watching the sensors and thinking. The doors will not hold for long, Marcus said. We need to activate the defense protocols. Defense protocols will kill them, Sarah said. Better them than us. Dr. Zelak shouted, another slam against the door. Grip was making that warning sound continuously now. Sarah made a decision. Open the door, she said. What? Everyone turned to stare at her. Open the door. I am going out there. That is suicide. Marcus grabbed her arm. Sarah, please. Do not do this. Sarah looked at Grip in her arms. The tiny predator looked back at her. In his eyes, she saw trust. Complete trust. He had no one else. His family was dead. She was all he had, and somehow she knew what she had to do. They see Grip as an enemy, Sarah said. But what if they see him as part of my pack? What if they understand that to get to him, they have to go through me? That is insane human logic, the kelvar said. Yes, Sarah agreed. It is. She walked to the door. Marcus moved to stop her, but Dr. Yuki held him back. The door opened. Sarah stepped out into the frozen night, carrying a predator cub to face 5 adult killing machines. Behind her, the research team watched in terrified silence. The cold air hit Sarah like a wall. 5 adult rhymestalkers stood in a semicircle around the base camp entrance. They were massive. Their crystalline fur caught the moonlight and sparkled like ice. Their eyes glowed yellow in the darkness. The largest one, probably the pack leader, took a step forward. Its lips pulled back to show teeth as long as knives. It made a deep rumbling sound that Sarah felt in her chest. Grip trembled in her arms. But he did not try to run away. He pressed closer to Sarah and made that warning sound again. Sarah took a slow breath. Her training kicked in. Every movement mattered. Every signal she sent with her body language would be read by these intelligent predators. She did not run. Running meant prey. She did not show fear. Fear meant weakness. Instead, she stood tall and looked directly at the pack leader. "This is my pack member," she said firmly. She held Grip up slightly so the adults could see him. "He is under my protection." The pack leader tilted its enormous head. Its ears moved forward. It was listening. Not understanding the words, Sarah knew, but understanding the tone, the intention. She lowered Grip back down but kept him close. With her free hand, she made a stopping gesture. Palm out. Universal body language that most predators understood. Stop. Come no further. The pack leader took another step forward. Sarah held her ground. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her chest, but she did not move backward. Not even 1 centimeter. Then something unexpected happened. Grip jumped out of her arms. He landed in the snow between Sarah and the pack. He stood on his 6 tiny legs and made the loudest sound Sarah had heard from him. It was a snarl, a challenge. The baby predator was defending her. The pack leader stopped. It looked at Grip with what seemed like confusion. Here was a cub from a rival pack. A cub they should kill, but the cub was defending this strange 2-legged creature. Sarah slowly crouched down next to Grip. She placed one hand on his back. The message was clear. We are together. We are a unit. We are pack. The pack leader made a sound. It was not aggressive. It was more like a question. The other 4 adult rhyme stalkers shifted their positions. They were communicating with each other in ways Sarah could not fully understand. Then the pack leader did something that made everyone inside the base camp gasp. It lowered itself to the ground. It placed its massive head on its front paws. It was a submissive posture. A peaceful gesture. Sarah waited. She kept her hand on Grip. The moment stretched out. Time seemed to stop. The only sound was the wind across the ice. Slowly, carefully, Sarah reached into her pocket. She pulled out a piece of dried meat. She showed it to the pack leader, then tossed it forward. The meat landed in the snow between them. The pack leader sniffed the air. Then it stood up and walked forward. It picked up the meat delicately in its huge jaws and swallowed it. Then it looked at Sarah again. Sarah pulled out another piece of meat. She offered it on her flat palm. Her arm was shaking, but she kept it steady. The pack leader came closer, closer, until its massive head was right in front of her. It could kill her with one bite, one swipe of its claws, but instead it gently took the meat from her hand. Its rough tongue touched her palm for just a moment. Grip chirped happily and ran up to the massive adult. He was so small next to it, like a mouse next to a lion, but the pack leader did not attack. Instead, it lowered its head and sniffed the cub. Then it did something incredible. It licked Grip, cleaning the cub like a parent would. Sarah understood. The pack leader had accepted Grip, not as an enemy, but not as one of their own pack either, as something new, as part of the human pack. The other 4 adults slowly approached. Sarah fed each one. Her supply of dried meat ran out quickly, but the gesture had been made. The peace had been established. After an hour, the adult pack left. They walked away into the frozen night, but they did not attack. They had chosen peace over violence, understanding over instinct. Sarah picked up Grip and walked back into the base camp. Her legs were shaking so badly she could barely stand. Marcus caught her before she fell. "That was the most insane thing I have ever seen," he said, but he was smiling. Dr. Zelek was standing in the corner with all 4 arms wrapped around himself. He looked like he might faint. "You made peace with Category 5 predators," he said weakly. "That is impossible. It goes against everything we know about animal behavior." "It goes against everything you know," Sarah corrected gently. "Humans have been doing this for thousands of years. We call it taming, befriending, domestication." The next few weeks were busy. Sarah documented everything about Grip, his eating habits, his play behavior, his sleep patterns. She also observed the adult pack from a safe distance. They returned several times. Each time Sarah fed them, Each time, the trust grew stronger. Word spread through the Galactic Conservation Collective. Humans had accomplished something that seemed impossible. They had befriended rhyme stalkers. The most dangerous predators on Frost 7 were now peaceful around the human research team. Other research teams started asking questions. How did the humans do it? What was their secret? Sarah explained it in report after report. It was not about dominance. It was not about control. It was about communication, understanding, respect, reading body language, building trust slowly, showing that you were not a threat, offering food, creating bonds. But most importantly, it was about seeing the animal not as a monster or a resource, but as an individual with thoughts and feelings and needs. One day, Dr. Yuki made an interesting discovery. She had been studying Earth history in detail. She pulled Sarah aside and showed her research. Look at this, Dr. Yuki said. Humans did not just befriend predators. We formed partnerships with them. Wolves helped us hunt. Cats protected our food stores from rodents. Horses carried us long distances. Birds warned us of danger. Dolphins led us to fish. We evolved together, Sarah said, understanding dawning. Exactly, Dr. Yuki agreed. Other species in the galaxy saw predators and ran, or they fought and killed. But humans? Humans looked at predators and thought, what if we could be friends? That night, Sarah sat outside the base with Grip. He had grown larger in just a few weeks. His horns were longer. His teeth were sharper, but he still climbed into her lap for warmth. He still purred when she scratched behind his ears. The adult pack was resting nearby. They had started spending nights near the base camp. They seemed to view the humans as part of an extended pack now. Not quite family, but not strangers either, allies, friends. Sarah looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was starting to understand something new about humans, something that made them unique. Humans did not conquer their world by being the strongest. They did not survive by being the fastest or the most dangerous. They survived by being the friendliest, by building bridges between species, by seeing potential in every creature they met. And now that trait, that strange human ability to befriend anything with teeth and claws, was about to change the entire galaxy. 3 months later, Sarah received an urgent message from the Galactic Conservation Collective headquarters. They needed her help immediately. There was a crisis on a colony world called Verdant 12. The transport ship arrived within a week. Sarah brought Grip with her. He was now the size of a small horse and still growing. The ship crew was terrified of him at first. But within days, Grip had charmed them all. He played fetch with the engineer. He slept near the pilot during long shifts. He had become what Sarah always knew he could be, a friend. Verdant 12 was a beautiful planet. It had thick forests, wide rivers, and mountains covered in purple moss. But it had a problem. A big one. The planet was home to creatures called thunder beasts. They were enormous herbivores with 6 legs, long necks, and tails like clubs. Each one weighed as much as 10 elephants. They traveled in herds of hundreds. 2 species had colonies on Verdant 12. The humans had a settlement in the Eastern Valley. The Kelvar had built floating cities above the Western Plains. Both groups had lived peacefully for years. Then the thunder beasts started migrating through the settlements. They destroyed buildings, trampled crops. 3 colonists had died in stampedes. Dozens were injured. The colonists fought back. They built barriers, set up sonic fences, fired warning shots. But the thunder beasts kept coming. The herd migrations happened twice per year. Nothing could stop them. The Galactic Council had already sent 3 teams of specialists. All 3 recommended the same solution: eliminate the thunder beasts. Hunt them to small numbers. Make the planet safe for colonization. Sarah was brought in as a final option. If she could not solve the problem, the hunting would begin. She arrived at the human settlement and met with the colonial governor. He was a tired-looking man named Director Hayes. He showed her footage of the last migration. The destruction was terrible. Entire neighborhoods crushed. Supply stores trampled into dust. We have tried everything, Director Hayes said. These creatures are too stupid to learn. They just follow their instincts. Nothing else matters to them. Or maybe they are smarter than you think, Sarah said quietly. She went out into the field with Grip following behind her. The thunder beast migration season was 2 weeks away. Sarah needed to understand these creatures before then. She found a small herd grazing near a river. There were about 30 thunder beasts. She observed them for hours, watching, taking notes, recording their behavior. Grip sat beside her, quiet and curious. The thunder beasts noticed them but did not seem afraid. They were too large to fear most predators. Sarah noticed something important. The herd was not moving randomly. They were following a path. A specific path. The younger beasts followed the older ones. The older ones seemed to know exactly where they were going. She pulled up satellite maps of the planet. She marked where the thunder beasts migrated. The pattern became clear. They were following ancient river valleys. Valleys that used to have water during certain seasons. Valleys that led to breeding grounds in the northern mountains. The human settlement was built directly in the middle of one of these ancient migration routes. The Kelvar floating cities were anchored above another route. The thunder beasts were not attacking the settlements. They were just trying to reach their breeding grounds, the way their ancestors had done for millions of years. Sarah brought her findings to Director Hayes and the Kelvar representatives. The thunder beasts are not the problem, she explained. We built our settlements on their migration paths. We are blocking them from reaching their breeding grounds. So we should just move our cities. Director Hayes sounded frustrated. We spent years building here. Millions of credits invested. You want us to abandon everything? No, Sarah said. I want us to work with the thunder beasts, not against them. She showed them her plan. Instead of barriers that blocked the thunder beasts, they would build corridors. Wide paths that guided the herds around the settlements. They would clear certain routes and leave them open. Plant the kind of vegetation that thunder beasts preferred along these routes. Create rest stops with water and food. The Kelvar representative made a bubbling sound of doubt. This is the human solution? Give the dangerous creatures what they want. They are not dangerous, Sarah said. They are herbivores. They do not want to hurt anyone. They just want to reach their breeding grounds. If we give them a safe path, they will use it. And if you are wrong? Director Hayes asked. If they ignore the corridors and destroy our settlements anyway. Sarah looked at Grip, who was lying at her feet. He was a perfect example of what she was trying to explain. Then we try something else, she said. But we do not kill them just because we do not understand them. That is not the human way. At least it should not be. The Galactic Council approved her plan. They gave her 2 weeks to prepare. It was not much time, but it would have to be enough. Sarah worked with both human and Kelvar engineers. They cleared 3 major corridors through and around the settlements. They planted fast-growing vegetation that thunder beasts like to eat. They created water stations every few kilometers. They installed gentle lighting that would guide the herds at night. But most importantly, Sarah trained volunteers in thunder beast behavior. She taught them body language, how to move slowly and calmly around the herds, how to guide them gently without causing panic, how to see the beasts not as threats, but as intelligent animals with their own needs and patterns. The migration day arrived. Sensors detected the main herd approaching from the south. 500 thunder beasts, moving toward the human settlement. Sarah and her team of volunteers stood at the entrance to the main corridor. People watched from safe distances. Some looked hopeful. Many looked terrified. The ground began to shake. The thunder beasts were coming. Sarah could see dust rising in the distance. She took a deep breath. This had to work. The lead thunder beast appeared. It was enormous. Its long neck swayed as it walked. Its footsteps made the ground tremble. Behind it, hundreds more emerged like a living mountain range. Sarah walked forward slowly. She held out her arms wide. The universal gesture for peace. The lead thunder beast stopped. It looked at her with large, gentle eyes. It made a low humming sound. Then Sarah did something that made everyone watching hold their breath. She turned her back on the massive creature. She walked toward the corridor entrance. And she waited. The lead thunder beast followed her, slowly, carefully. It entered the corridor. Then another beast followed, and another. Within minutes, the entire herd was using the corridor. They walked peacefully around the settlement. They stopped at the water stations. They ate the planted vegetation. They moved like a river flowing around stones. Not a single building was damaged. Not a single colonist was hurt. The migration took 6 hours, and then the thunder beasts were gone, continuing their ancient journey to the breeding grounds. Director Hayes found Sarah afterward. He looked stunned. He shook her hand and said simply, "You did it." "You actually did it," Sarah smiled. She scratched Grip behind his horns. We just had to see them as people see old friends, she said, with understanding and respect. 5 years passed. Sarah became famous across the galaxy, not for being a warrior, not for discovering new technology, but for something far more valuable. She became known as someone who could make peace with any creature. The Galactic Conservation Collective created a new organization. They called it the Predator Keeper Guild. Sarah was the founder and director. The guild had one mission: to teach other species how to coexist with dangerous wildlife. Most of the guild members were human. That was not surprising. Humans had thousands of years of experience living alongside predators. What was surprising was how many other species wanted to learn from them. Dr. Zalak was one of the first non-human members. The Torvan scientist had completely changed his views after watching Sarah work. He now specialized in bird-like predators. He had successfully negotiated peace between colonists and massive flying hunters on 3 different worlds. The Kelvar sent representatives to learn as well. They were particularly good at understanding ocean predators. Their floating nature helped them observe sea creatures in ways that land-based species could not. The guild solved problems across the galaxy. They stopped wars between settlers and native predators. They created protected corridors for migrating herds. They trained colonists to read animal body language. They designed settlements that worked with nature instead of against it. Everywhere they went, the message was the same. Predators are not monsters. They are intelligent beings with their own needs and patterns. If you learn to understand them, you can live alongside them. You can even become friends. Grip was now fully grown. He was massive, 3 meters tall at the shoulder. His crystalline fur sparkled in any light. His horns were long and sharp. His teeth could crush metal. His claws could tear through armor. He was also the gentlest creature Sarah had ever known. While gentle with friends, he was still a predator. He still hunted. He still had instincts. But he knew the difference between prey and pack, between threats and friends. Grip became the symbol of the Predator Keeper Guild. People across the galaxy knew about the human woman and her rhyme stalker companion. They represented a new way of thinking about wildlife. A human way. On a warm afternoon, Sarah was giving a demonstration to a group of alien dignitaries. They had come from a dozen different species. All of them had problems with dangerous wildlife on their colony worlds. All of them were considering elimination as the solution. Sarah wanted to show them there was another way. She stood in the middle of the demonstration arena. Grip was resting in the shade nearby. He looked peaceful, almost harmless, until you noticed his size, his teeth, his claws. Many of you see predators as threats, Sarah said to the audience. You see teeth and claws and think only of danger. That is natural. That is how most species in the galaxy think. She walked over to Grip. He opened one eye and looked at her. Humans learn to think differently, Sarah continued. We looked at wolves and saw hunting partners. We looked at horses and saw transportation. We looked at cats and saw pest control. We looked at every creature and asked, what can we learn from them? How can we work together? She reached down and pulled off one of her gloves. Grip eyes opened wider. He recognized that game. The game from 5 years ago when he was just a tiny cub. Sarah held up the glove. Grip jumped to his feet. He was huge now. He moved with incredible speed. His massive jaws opened. The audience gasped. Several aliens jumped up from their seats ready to run. Grip snatched the glove gently from Sarah's hand. He pulled on it. Sarah raised her hand. The enormous rhyme stalker, who could easily kill an adult human with one swipe, just hung there from her arm, dangling in the air. Growling softly, but the growl was playful, happy. The growl of a predator playing with a friend. Sarah smiled. She lowered her hand and Grip dropped to the ground. He immediately started shaking the glove back and forth like a puppy with a toy. The audience sat back down slowly. They looked stunned. One of the dignitaries, a spider-like creature called a Threx, spoke through its translator. That creature could destroy you. Why does it not? Sarah sat down in the grass next to Grip. The massive predator immediately rolled over for a belly rub. She laughed and obliged. Because he does not see me as prey, Sarah explained. He sees me as family, pack, friend. Those concepts are more powerful than instinct, more powerful than hunger, more powerful than territorial aggression. Dr. Zalak stood up from the audience. His feathers were calm now. He had learned so much in 5 years. I used to think humans were crazy, he said, making friends with predators, living alongside creatures that could kill them. But now I understand. You do not see teeth? You see possibilities. You do not see claws. You see potential partners. The Kelvar representative floated forward. Its tentacles waved thoughtfully. We have a saying in our language. It translates roughly to, the safest distance from danger is as far as possible. But humans have a different saying, yes? Sarah nodded. She knew what the Kelvar meant. We say, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, Sarah said. But we also say, the best friends have the sharpest teeth. Over the next several hours, Sarah taught the dignitaries everything she knew. How to read body language, how to approach slowly, how to offer food without showing fear, how to establish boundaries, how to build trust over time. She explained that every species was different. Rhymestalkers responded to pack dynamics. Thunderbeasts needed clear migration paths. Ocean predators required understanding of territorial waters. Flying hunters needed vertical space. But the core principle was always the same. Respect, understanding, communication, seeing the animal as an individual, not a category. Not prey, not threat, not resource, but as a living being with needs and intelligence. By the end of the demonstration, 12 new contracts had been signed. 12 worlds wanted the Predator Keeper Guild to help them. 12 species were ready to try the human way. That evening, Sarah sat outside the guild headquarters with Grip. The stars were bright. The air was warm. Grip head rested on her lap. Despite his size, he still liked to be close to her. Marcus joined her. He had become the guild operations director. He sat down with a tired sigh. You know what is funny? He said. When I first saw you walk into camp with Grip, I thought you had lost your mind. I thought you were going to get us all killed. Sarah smiled. She remembered that day so clearly. The tiny cub hanging from her glove. The fear in everyone's eyes. The impossible decision she had made. And now, she asked. Now I think you saved the galaxy, Marcus said quietly. Not with weapons. Not with technology. But with friendship. Sarah looked at Grip. He was sleeping now. His breathing was slow and steady. His massive body was relaxed and peaceful. This creature who could tear through steel. This predator who could hunt anything on his planet. He trusted her completely and she trusted him. That was the human gift to the galaxy. Not violence. Not conquest. Not domination. But the ability to look at any creature, no matter how dangerous, and see a potential friend. The ability to turn enemies into allies. Predators into protectors. Monsters into companions. Grip shifted in his sleep and his paw twitched. He was probably dreaming about chasing something. Or maybe about that day long ago when he was a tiny cub who stole a glove from a strange two-legged creature. That moment had changed everything. Not just for Sarah and Grip, but for the entire galaxy. Because in that moment a human had done what humans do best. She looked at a predator and saw not a monster. She saw a friend. And in doing so, she had proven that the most powerful force in the universe was not strength or intelligence or technology. It was the simple ability to care. To connect. To love across all boundaries, even the ones with teeth.